Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video, we are going to continue our look at painting the BladeGuard Veteran Primaris Marine from the Brazen Claws chapter. And in this video, we are going to apply transfers onto this side. So we had shown previously how to freehand the chapter icon, but in this one, I'm going to show you guys some kind of easier ways to get these symbols onto models using transfers. I was just illustrating there that I'm going to use the veteran icon. I'm going to use some art coat here. I'll slap a little bit onto my palette, and I'm going to grab a trusty rusty brush to apply this. Now I'm no thinner, just really the dampness of the brush to thin the color out, but the medium out, and just a quick little application onto the model. I'm not too worried about getting a glassy like surface. A single coat is more than enough to achieve this. I'm also going to apply it to the little shield on the chest as well, because we're going to slap a transfer on there as well, just to gussy it up a bit. Once it's dry, we're going to pick out our transfer, and again, like I said, we're going to use the veteran icon, the it looks like a crux terminatus, so we just carefully cut it out with a nice fresh X-Acto blade, and once we have it all cut out, we are pretty much ready to go. I'm just playing with the transfer at the moment here, and you can't really see it all that well because it's a white transfer, and I do want that to stand out on the shoulder pad. I'm using some little clamping tweezers here to hang on to the paper, making sure that I don't hang on to the transfer itself, so that make sure when you are using it, you leave a little bit of paper so that you have something to grab hold of. I'm going to grab a little shallow little dish, and I'm going to load up some water here just to kind of fill it out, and of course we apply our transfer into the water and let it sit for a few moments, usually less than a minute really. I just test with my brush here, kind of see if it can scooch around onto the paper, and once I see it that it moves around on the paper, it is ready to go. So we take it out of the water, and with my brush I quickly apply some water to the surface and then gently slide the transfer onto the model surface. I'm not too worried about final placement yet, as we're going to correct that here, and with a damp brush we basically move the transfer around until we are pretty much happy with its placement. Now, one thing I will say here is that in hindsight, I probably could have did some incisions on the negative space leaning into the crux itself, as it does crimple quite a bit on this curved surface, so be mindful of that. I dry the brush off and then squeegee out the excess moisture from under the transfer. This is also very important here. And again, because we have that smooth surface, the transfer adheres really, really well, but you can see there's some crimping and crumpling going on with the transfer, but that is fairly normal. I like to use Walthers Solvaset, although there are other products out there that do the similar thing, but I like Walthers, and I apply a fairly generous amount on top of the transfer, very gently, of course. And once you've laid this down, do not move the transfer. The transfer might move on you. Do not play with it, as it'll eat away at the transfer and basically just destroy the transfer, and you have to do this whole process all over again. I'm applying a little skull here. Again, same procedure, clamping tweezers, cut it out, wet the surface, and slide the skull into place. This is a nice little skull detail. There was other little emblems on the transfer sheet that were kind of cool. Ooh, almost nailed it that time. But for final placement, again, same thing with a wet brush. Wet the surface a little bit, and then just move the transfer around until you are happy with where it is. And of course, you can see there, I do apply a fairly generous amount of water onto that surface so the transfer can move about. But once I'm happy with where it is, I squeegee out the excess moisture, dry the brush off, and you can see here basically how we when we're glazing and what have you, you have too much pigment on a surface or it goes into an area you don't want, you quickly dry your brush off and then just draw the excess out. It's same kind of thing here. You draw the excess water off that surface and then begin squeegeeing out the moisture from under the transfer. Then, of course, we apply a very generous amount of Walthers. Again, you can see there, it's like quite a bit there. And that's normally what I do, is I lay a very generous amount. And as long as you don't play with it, as long as you don't move it around, nothing bad will happen, of course. But, you do have to trust in the process. And once it's done, you can see the transfer on the armor and on the shoulder pad. You can see how the shoulder pad, it is conformed right to that surface. Even though there was crimpling going on and all that, It adheres really, really nicely, and it looks really good. And now here we're going to take some aluminium medium, or whatever matte medium is your preference. And with this, I'm just going to quickly apply a generous amount onto the surface to knock the shine out of the surface, because we have that art coat, and the transfer itself is also kind of shiny as well. And once you apply this layering of aluminium medium, or whatever matte varnish you prefer, it marries the illusion to the surface. And as you can see, once it's dry, you can see how the transfer looks like it was like almost hand painted onto that surface. It's a really good effect, and don't be afraid to give this one a try. Of course, we could take this a little further, which we're going to do. I'm going to take some Leviathan blue contrast paint, and basically I'm going to just paint right on top of this. Now, if you're going to go this route, I definitely recommend following the steps as I have laid out here, because using a thinned out color like contrast in this regard, it just will not sit on that surface very well, unless of course you had a layer between, and that is what the aluminium medium is doing. It's providing a bit of surface for the paint to grab hold of. You can see there I refined a little circle. Basically, I think you guys can get that I'm going to paint a little gemstone here. I'm using some Incubi Darkness with a drop of aluminium medium. It's kind of like a 1-to-1 mix ratio. It's a pretty thinned out paint, and I'm going to paint this into the end, almost about 3/4 of that surface that I've created there. It didn't really need to be Leviathan blue. I could have also used like Black Templar or any other really dark color for that matter, but I chose Leviathan blue because it was the first one I saw, really. Sticking on scale green is next. We're going to slap a little bit onto our palette, add a drop of aluminium medium just to thin it out. And this is the key really when doing this kind of freehanding of designs and painting on top of transfers. The other idea I also had was adding shadows into the crux terminatus itself, to really kind of pretty it up and give some dimensionality to it. But here you can see with this highlight, it's about half of that circle. And of course, I'm creating like a little crescent shape in there, like a little crescent moon kind of shape. Sotek green is next. We're going to slap that onto the palette. We're going to add a drop of medium to this as well. Surprise, surprise by this point, right? Once we have that kind of all mixed up and ready to go, this is going to be a very thin little crescent shape, almost like a little banana shape, really. It's just like a thin little line. Also, one other thing that I am doing in this process is basically I'm bringing this up closer to my face, kind of doing the old man, staring over my glasses kind of thing, so I can see what I'm accurately doing. So it's not really shown here, but I am doing that just to kind of correct the shapes. I'm demonstrating this for you guys, but in actuality, I'm actually kind of bringing that really close up to my face. Temple Guard blue is next with a drop of medium, aluminium medium, of course, 1-to-1. Pretty much all these have been 1-to-1. And of course, this final one is just a tiny little tick along the bottom corner of the gemstone. Again, this is a painted representation. It could represent, say, a flat gemstone in the shoulder pad. Who knows? Whatever, right? And you can see that it's not a perfect circle, again, because we can correct that later on. Not a huge deal. White Scar is next. We're going to slap this onto the palette. No mediums, just the dampness of the brush to thin the color out ever so slightly. And of course, we are going to apply a drop for the spot highlight. And in fact, I actually do a couple more dots to kind of complete that effect later on. But then also, which is not demonstrated, is I also correct that edge around the gemstone and make it more circular. And as you can see there, the final result, it's a nice little circle inside the transfer. And of course, that's pretty much everybody else can do this. And it's a great way to add interest to your designs. We could also do this to the skull, add shadows, make it stand out, use the transfers themselves as basically like a template for our designs. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. Big thank you to my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below. There are varying tiers of support, and a huge thank you to everybody who does. Take care of those brushes, and they will take care of you.